Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's virtual live session. I'm Asmani from People Matters, and it is my pleasure to be your host for the day. I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us in this exclusive session that we have curated in partnership with MeritTrac. Today's discussion will revolve around navigating the changing talent acquisition landscape, especially in the BFSI sector. The banking, financial services, and insurance sector is one of the key pillars of the Indian economy, and it is transforming rapidly. This growth presents challenges and opportunities alike. At this stage, what can potentially give a head start to corporations is how they acquire, groom, and leverage talent. Thus, HR's role becomes key in supporting growth as well as paving the path ahead to achieve business outcomes. With the HR department having several responsibilities from designing perks and benefits to supervising staff performance, the BFSI sector is witnessing growth in recruitment outsourcing. As a result of stringent regulations and intense competition, the process of hunting for the right talent often becomes a daunting task. To empower organizations in their talent hunt, People Matters and MeritTrac bring to you this webcast. Now, moving towards the session, I am very excited to invite our speakers for today. Joining us first is Pratima Pinto Thomas, Head HR at Fino Payments Bank. Pratima is an experienced senior human resources professional with a demonstrated history of working in the accounting industry, real estate industry, and the defense sector. She is skilled in budgeting, talent management, employee engagement, and employer branding. A Gallup certified strengths coach, she is known for working with the youth. Pratima is also a postgraduate in HRDM and business management from JBIMS and NMIMS Mumbai. Welcome, Pratima. It's great to have you on board.
Thank you so much, Asmani. Looking forward to have a great afternoon.
Next, we have with us Ruhi Pandey, Chief Human Resources Officer of Godrej Capital. Ruhi Pandey heads the Human Resources vertical at Godrej Capital. Prior to this, she was heading HR for Godrej Properties and was with them for 2.5 years before taking on the mantle as Godrej Housing Finance's employee number one. She, along with the MD, was instrumental in identifying and onboarding the CXO or the co-founder team and now is working on the key levels of the people strategy to enable a best-in-class financial institution. At Godrej Properties, she created and enabled the HR strategy to deliver an engaged and capable workforce and led the people transformation and organization change agenda. Welcome, Ruhi. It's great to have you on board with us.
Thank you so much, Asmani. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Rohit. And we also have with us Sujata Kumaraswamy, CEO at MeritTrac Services, a seasoned and successful leader with 21 years of experience in incubating and running new businesses and functions in education, assessment, IT services, BPO, and financial services industries, incubation, business operations and transformation, operational excellence, margin optimization, customer experience, governance, risk management, and compliance. Previously, Sujata was leading new business, corporate strategy, and operations as Vice President, Manipal Global Education Services, the EdTech arm of Manipal Group. She's also a certified Master Black Belt and a graduate of GE's prestigious Financial Management Program. Welcome, Sujata. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Asmani. Good to be here.
And last but not the least, we have Venkatesh R., President and Head Operations Technology and Human Resources at DCB Bank Limited. Venkatesh R. is currently the President and Head of Technology Operations, Human Resources and CIO at DCB Bank Limited. He has completed his bachelor's degree in commerce and post-graduation in personal management from XISS with an overall experience of 31 years in banking and oil and energy sector. Mr. Venkatesh has been working towards the transformation of DCB Bank into a new generation bank for the last 16 years. This role allows him to interface with the board of DCB Bank and drive digital transformation at the bank. Welcome, Venkatesh. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Asmani. I'm privileged to be part of this accomplished panelist. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, a quick housekeeping for our audience. As we go on with the session, please feel free to add any questions you may have for our panelists in the chat, and we will take them towards the end of the discussion. So now, without further ado, we will start with our Q&A session. So I'd like to start with the opening question, which is for all of our panelists, and that is, what is the number one hiring trend you believe would impact talent recruitment in the BFSI sector in the coming months? Ruhi, I would like to start with you.
Right. Well, Asmani, I think if you really look at the hiring trends over the last few years, one of the biggest change we have seen, and I'm pretty sure that everyone will add value to that, is the sheer fact that we're all going very digital, and BFSI specifically virtual digital. These are the kind of trends which we see around us. So I see that over the next couple of years, hiring is definitely going to be on an upswing. There was a time in between where there was a bit of a lull, and to that extent, it became a little bit of an employer's market, but we're back in the same situation. Great resignation is continuing to haunt all industries, and BFSI is no different. And I feel like hiring is on an upswing. Couple of trends which at least I'm foreseeing, and uh, I would say a lot more generalists will be hiring. There's going to be an openness towards hiring from not only BFSI industry, which traditionally we have been looking at, but we've been having discussions that if there is a challenge which needs to be solved, the answer to that challenge could often come from a totally different industry. Maybe it need not be from BFSI. So I see a very high openness to recruiting people from outside. Secondly, there's a lot more thrust on building talent. So campus programs are on the upswing. Everyone understands that in this war for talent, no one can win it by just paying the extra bucks. We know that people from the IT folks are running around with 3 to 4 offers in their hand. Every time you make a counter offer, there are two other companies standing. So most organizations are understand. So a very strong trend I'm seeing is the building. The third, and I'm sure that Sujata will share a lot of light on that, but the sheer science of hiring. How are you making your selection decisions, getting more psychometric instruments, hiring the right people, rather than just hiring en masse and in larger numbers? So I see that these would be three key trends, but would love to hear from the others.
Venkatesh, could you add what you think would be the top hiring trends that will impact the landscape?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think at this point in time, when we are seeing little, kind of a tailwind as far as the economy is concerned, I really feel that the growth would actually take a center stage after a couple of years of, COVID impact that we have seen, and I see in this millennial kind of a generation that we are actually hiring India's population being 50% below 20 years of age, and 30 below 35 we have 75% of the population. I think in the workplace a lot of things are going to change, because the supervisors that we have today, they are still some of the X and other generations, and I think that is going to change in the next 3 to 5 years. And 6 months is long term for youngsters, and which means that the mobility is only going to increase, which means more hiring and frequent hiring. And I agree with Ruhi that buying talent from outside is not going to help, because everyone is aiming for the same pool, same limited pool that is available. I really feel that the talent pool is likely to get expanded, because companies are going to realize that until they invest for talent for tomorrow, buying talent for yesterday is not going to help them.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Venkatesh. Pratima, now I'd like to come to you. What is your take on this question?
I believe Rohi and Venkatesh have done great justice to the question, and they've covered most of the trends. But I would like to probably harp upon, this whole trend from an employees, or rather the candidates or the talent market perspective, because that is of a grave concern. We saw this trend actually beginning in the mid of last year, and it was only restricted to the IT sector or the tech world talent. However, now, especially from the BFSI space, it has begun to hit our governance functions, the finance functions, you name it, you name every function. You have candidates sitting with at least 4 to 5 offers. That's the biggest this thing. And I believe this trend is going to stay on. How much ever we say that it's going to move and it's probably, going to ease out, I feel going forward with the kind of openness of the social media, the openness of the exposure that is given to this millennial, generation, I would say this trend is going to stay on for a long time, and we are going to have window shoppers coming at the HR or the organizational window.
Thank you for sharing that, Pratima. Sujata, what's your take on this?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts and sort of experiences from our side, right? Considering we work across industries and do a fair bit of work, especially in the BFSI space. We've seen a huge focus now on putting together, I'll call it a sourcing strategy, you know, and obviously the driver is this, that, it's a seller's market. And what that really means is that very much like like a supply chain, that kind of context, you've got to have a very specific and dedicated strategy around sourcing your talent across roles, across levels, all of that. So we've seen many customers actually put together, dedicated teams for this, and a huge lot of focus. And we do a fair bit of work strategizing this with them as well, right? I mean, what are the skill sets? Which are the places? Are there options to get global talent if they are remote working kind of things? I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? So sourcing and that whole focus around it is going to be a big deal, and that's going to a large extent determine who the winners are, right? I think that's definitely a strong trend that we're seeing. The other is, I think, a couple of the panelists spoke about it, is just this massive influx of technology, right? I think we've never seen as much tech coming into HR and the hiring space as we have in the last couple of years, right? And that's just going to grow faster and faster. So as an assessment provider, we're putting a lot of big bucks into coming up with new features, strengthening our platforms and stuff like that. So tech is, of course, here to stay, and it's across the life cycle. The third is, and thanks, Ruhi, for the hook on that, but the seriousness, I think, around assessing comprehensively and accurately has dramatically gone up. I think, there was always assessments, right? But I think customers and, our customers that we work with have realized the importance of it, and how the right strategy around assessing can determine good fit, faster, faster hiring, and also to a very large extent manage your attrition, because that's the other problem, right? I mean, in many cases, it's that leaking bucket, that whole concept. So also making sure that when you hire and you put in all of that effort and money into bringing people on board, that they stay with you for a reasonable period of time. So I think these are the three very strong trends that we see.
Thank you for sharing that, Sujata. Pratima, I'd like to come back to you with the first question. So I really liked how you spoke about window shoppers in the recruitment space. So exclusive to Fino payments, what are some of the ways in which traditional corporate hiring practices have changed, and what is the recruitment transformation happening at your organization?
Lovely. Thanks for this question, Asmani. Um, Among the traditional methods that were earlier used, I would probably separate it pre-COVID and probably COVID and henceforth, or rather now. Uh, just like Sujata mentioned, the sourcing piece has completely seen a transformation. Apart from that, from the traditional methods of sourcing through the portals, through the, plain Jane social media, or for that matter, through consultants, etc., we have moved to more of interactive sourcing with the open market, with through the open social media platforms, etc. Very naturally, even the entire interaction process itself has undergone a change. Earlier, you had employee candidates coming in for face-to-face interviews. Nowadays, it's all moved to online. However, we do emphasize on people visiting our office space to more of, to focus more on on the vibes, so that we can create a pre-joining experience for them. We invite them to the place of work after they are selected, rather, and they come, they see the place, they see the feel the vibes out here, interact with one or team members, etc., and thereafter they can be convinced to take a decision or so. It's more of a self factor that we have to work on out here. Apart from that, earlier we knew that if a candidate is applying for a role, he was probably a sure shot person who wanted the role. Today, it's the other way around. We need to probably deploy our senses to assess whether this guy is a serious candidate or no, whether the individual is seriously wanting this offer, or is he here just to probably get another letter in, to kind of renegotiate or hook on somewhere. So where we are focusing on is to understand the needs, the desires, the aspirations of the individual, so that we have a win-win situation. There is less amount of time that is wasted. We try to engage mainly into understanding the seriousness of the individuals coming up even for these one-odd interactions. Apart from that, the traditional approaches to the pre-onboarding process is something that we have tried to ease out at Fino, try to adopt a lot of things digitally, try to move a lot of administrative documentation processes through a digital mode, so that there is less amount of time that is wasted or rather spent on say a joining, etc. So all these put together, I could say at Fino, we've tried to deploy technology wherever possible. Apart from that, we are focusing on the human understanding of connecting with the individual to gauge his seriousness to join us.
Those were very fantastic strategies. Thank you for sharing that, Fatima. Ruhi, I'd like to come to you, and I would want to understand how Godrej Capital is, reimagining their corporate hiring practices, and do we see an expansion, in hiring from tier 2 and tier 3 cities?
Yeah. So I think, Pratima and Sujata have alluded to it. Venkatesh also mentioned some of the newer age trends. And one of the things I think Venkatesh highlighted is this sheer amount of millennials and Generation Z coming into the industry and coming into the workforce. And we are, in fact, in many ways, we call ourselves a pandemic baby, because after I moved in from properties into the current business of Godrej Capital, the pandemic hit us. So our hiring has been actually 100% done during the pandemic. So 2-3 trends which we saw, and in many ways I don't think we were prepared for it. We all learned along the way. We kind of course corrected where it was required. Somehow or the other, currently our 85% of our workforce is Generation Z and millennials. So some of the trends which we see and some of the things which we have adapted to is the entire concept of virtual hiring. Now one is of course to get the infrastructure and ensuring that you have the infra as well as the hardware in place. But the second thing is to see how you have an ERP, which can then sit on the entire candidate experience. How do you ensure your managers are trained to select? Because we, at least in our organization, are extremely highly focused on both the elements. One is, why should we hire the candidate? Is that candidate a good fit? Where we use a plethora of tools, cognitive tests, wherever required, an occupational personality questionnaire to see whether there's a fit in what we have to offer and what the candidate is looking for. And second, which is to understand, why is the candidate joining us? Is it just to pass time because the individual had 6 months in between? So let me just go get a Godrej brand name, or let me just, in the absence of having anything else to do, just or or is it to take one more offer and then go back and negotiate? So is it for the right reasons? So it was very important for us to train our managers in the sheer art and science of selecting online. In the absence of seeing an individual, how do you gauge for body language? A lot of cues. And I think Pratima just mentioned that meeting these people physically just to get a vibe, and that's such an important word. You can catch a vibe when you're physically in the same space. How would you catch a vibe when you are virtually? Second thing is training them, because the candidate experience is very important when you are hiring, when you are interviewing people online. Simple things like people switching off cameras, making folks wait, because if you're virtual, everyone assumes that you basically have nothing else to do. So how do you get the entire training of managers in place? So that was the second thing. The ERP, which I spoke about, so from tracking of interviewing feedback, to the kind of feedback which needs to go out of the candidate, to the interviewing decision. A lot of that earlier was pen and paper or discussions, but moving them to an online forum. And believe me when I say this, Asmani, it's actually made the process very scientific. So quite sure Sujata has a lot more view on it, but it is said that research does say that having nuggets of interview feedback and then panel coming in together to discuss is a far better idea than three people interviewing the same candidate and then reaching a conclusion, because then there is a bias. The loudest person in the room can influence others. So we've seen that a lot of our interviewing decisions are better that way. The third thing which Pratima has already pointed out is uh, these people are on social media. So how do you harness the power of social media? Taking it to your intranet, internal job postings, ensuring that you have a very robust employee referral, being relevant and available not just on LinkedIn, but also on Instagram, Glassdoor, Twitter. These are all new forums of how employers are, prospective employees are interviewing people. The last but not the least, but we found it very interesting, is building the profiles or sharing more about your middle managers. A lot of organizations share a lot about the top management, the company, everyone knows, DCB, FINO, wherever we are coming from, are large organizations. But I've realized that candidates, especially during this time, were very interested in knowing what is my day to day life going to be? Who is my manager? And many interviews, when I was doing, especially in the last couple of years, I've seen this trend. They've referred to their line supervisor saying, "Oh, I did go and check the online profile of XYZ, and I'm very impressed." Or the other way around. I mean, usually people will tell you only when they're impressed. I'm assuming the people who got depressed never turned up. But how do you build stories around what a day to day work life was going to be? And in artificial intelligence is just getting into the science of recruitment. There's a lot more we can do it with it. We've just started getting in a lot more in the onboarding, not so much in the interviewing, but that's again something which we tested during this time. Am I audible?
You are, Ruhi. I think
Yes,
we are.
Ruhi, I
we
believe
could hear
Asmani.
you. I think
Okay, all
Asmani's
right.
connection is
Yes.
probably.
Okay, Asmani got frozen. I think Venkatesh would be great to hear also your views on it.
Right. Interesting, Ruhi. You covered, quite a portion of what's actually happening. So the way we looked at the entire digital process and the trends per se, I think the 2 years of pandemic gave us an opportunity to reflect on
I am.
what.
Oh,
Asmani, we
I'm
have
so
just
sorry.
taken over from you and running the session, so we're switching over to
No,
Okay,
no,
go
please,
ahead.
please go ahead. I'm so, yeah, I'm so sorry. I had like a power cut, so I just got cut off. No worries. Please, Venkatesh, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was saying that we looked at the pandemic opportunity to reflect on, how we can, you know, reimagine ourselves. How should we look at the future? And, we had, a vision of, let's say, how do we, bring down the cost of recruitment, cost of, the candidate, hiring, etc. And then vis-a-vis the productivity that we would have, because the recruitment cost is also a portion of what it goes in terms of employee cost. The second thing we looked at, that how do you reduce the cycle time? That's very critical, because as you know, every line manager wants the resource as of yesterday, and bringing down the cycle time is a key priority for not just the line manager but also for recruiters. Third, it was that how do you create a candidate delight per se. Okay, so these are three, kind of three pronged objectives that we had, and we first looked at that, through two mediums. We said we will, it's all about creating a brand awareness, about getting a peek, giving the the prospective candidates a peek into what kind of culture we have, what kind of stories that they can actually listen into, because these are some of the things that they can then connect with. And I think art of storytelling and telling them what we have, the employee experiences, sharing them in LinkedIn or Instagram and other modes that the youngsters are more familiar and they can connect with. That's one piece of thing that we have done on the branding. The second that we have used is that we have a flagship program called Top Recruit, and we connect with about 200 business schools in the country. And typically, the Top Recruit program aims at giving specific assignments to which are real life business cases to the campuses, various campuses. And we launched this program through, it's akin to a YouTube live. Like, I did one program which actually had more than 3,000 registrations, and it was attended by, several of those people. And then you had a Q&A. You were running about, not just about the Top Recruit program or the assignment, but I gave them a peek into how the economy is happening, what happened in the pandemic world, and things like that. Some of these knowledge series and interactions with the students across the country under one roof would have not been possible if we didn't have the digital medium and, the access to network, or, right from the nook and corner of the country. So this was the second piece that we do. As regards specific to the selection process, and Ruhi, you talked about artificial intelligence, and I said, look, I will build on what you just said. So we use artificial intelligence as well as machine learning as a part of our the entire selection process. So what we do is that when there are jobs, we actually use this tool to automatically publish this job across various job portals. And on a click of a button, all the jobs get posted. The candidates who actually put their resumes in the portal, seeing that into our job site, which is a separate microsite that we have, they can immediately, after the upload, they would actually be able to see which jobs would actually suit them, because we do a parsing of the CVs, and then the pop-up would come up with most ideal job fit for them. So that's something which creates kind of a delight for them, because they can see. And third is, when it comes to us, we are able to see which of the profile have got a thumbs up and a thumbs down, because it actually stamps each of those applications in that manner. So in a way, from a 0% hiring through a job site kind of a thing, our own job site, career site, we have actually ramped up to about 25% of our entire recruitment happens through this portal, and which is phenomenal. And our reliance on other job sites has actually come down to about 6 to 7%. And we have built a candidate pool of close to about 80,000 profiles, which we can actually churn at any point in time and see, wherever there are requirement, we can actually, even without advertising, we should be able to see the benefit of that. So that's one part with regard to selection. The entire onboarding process is digitized. As you know, we are a bank which are catering to banked, unbanked, underserved areas of our country. So it is actually rural, semi-urban, metro, across. And can't imagine if we didn't use the technology to get the paper to reach us, and the candidate has joined, not joined, we won't come to know. And at the same time, it would give a terrible experience to the candidate, because they may not get salary on time, they may not have a proper process. So broadly, all these three areas have given a great fillip in terms of what we are doing using technology. Having said that, technology is a tool which actually works better alongside the human intervention that is there. No amount of technology usage can replace one-on-one interactions and an engagement. We also use, we used to use a tool, and we use it less, but I just want to tell you, keeping in touch with the candidate during their transition time, we have an app through which they can actually getting to know about the senior people in the organization. They can participate in the quiz, etc., and they can earn points and then build on that further, and then they can actually take the role of an avatar or something that sort, or a supermodel kind of a thing. That brings a great amount of connectivity with the youngster generation, and it has been a great hit in terms of building engagement with them during the time. You have that notice period of 90 days, and 89th day you come to know that the person is not going to join, or a no show day. I think some of these things have been helpful for us in creating a digital transformation, but building that with a great personalized human interaction.
Thank you for sharing those fantastic insights, Venkatesh and Ruhi. So now I'd like to come to you, Sujata. Our panelists have spoken a lot about digital innovation in the recruitment space, and you yourself have spoken about the influx of technology today. So would you like to share your insights on how technology, what is the role of technology in the recruitment cycle today?
Yeah, one word is huge. I think again, right? Few sort of observations, learnings, experiences, especially from the last 2 years. I think the use of tech in recruitment was there, even pre-COVID, but in a very limited sort of fashion, right? I think companies were a lot more comfortable going, physically to campuses, conducting everything, as much as possible in person and stuff like that. So there's been a bit of a forced adoption, but I think we, as human beings, we rapidly adapt. So I think while the transition itself was forced, I think companies have embraced technology in recruitment like never before, right? So we've the kind of work that we do today, for example, right? We manage. I mean, the expectation is that a service provider like us will manage something end to end. So Venkatesh, to your point about right from creating a microsite to deploying algos that will help you at least with the first level of matching. Obviously that's just it's a way of filtering. You can't obviously just blindly take that data and say, okay, now this is the set of people, but at least it gives you some level of filtering. So right from designing the microsite according to the company's brand, culture, some of the algorithms they would want us to deploy, till the point of pre-onboarding, let me put it that way, right? The expectation very clearly is that it will be fully digital. It'll be a single integrated platform, as much as possible, without a lot of hop in, hop out kind of stuff, right? Because that's very disruptive, both for the organization as well as for the candidates, right? So it's got to be seamless, one single integrated system, which is obviously the UI is supposed to be, is fantastic, very, very easy to deploy, adapt, and things like that. And something that gives you very deep insights and analytics as well. So I won't stop at just the digitization part of it, right? I think the expectation also is that you will use the power of data to give an organization the right insights into further improving their recruitment strategy. So it's and it can be as simple as the best sort of cities, and those are more and more becoming forget about tier 2, right? Tier 3 and so on. The best places where you can find the right candidates for a certain role, or the absolute the bang on combination of skills that will match a particular opportunity you've got. So that level of the insights that will help the recruitment team, I think, has become a very fundamental ask. The long way to go, but I will actually combine, Asmani, your question with tech and data. And that's I won't even call it a trend. I think it's just matter of fact today. And we do it, the expectation again is that it will be throughout the life cycle. So it's pre-assessment, it's during the assessment, and there are multiple levels of it that happen. Typically, there are, till maybe a video or an in-person interview and a final selection, all the way till pre-onboarding. In fact, in many cases, we would also automate and send out offer letters, right? So it's pretty much end to end that we see customers using technology.
Thank you for sharing that, Sujata. I think that entire emphasis on insights and data is very relevant, especially to the recruitment space today. So, Pratima, now I would like to come to you. This is more from like a competency level. Like, I want to understand from you, like, what are those competencies that BFSI sectors seek from the candidates today, and how are you measuring those competencies, both hard skills and soft skills, at the recruitment level?
Great. Um, Asmani, one needs to realize that probably, as recruiters, an interview of two to three sittings of probably an hour each or so may not actually be, good enough to probably gauge the success of the skill level of the candidate for the organization. Um, we can use every psychometric test or an assessment. However, all these assessments, etc., only become eliminators, like what Sujata just mentioned in the previous question. They can only be eliminators to come or to bring us closer to the closest match that the organization requires. While the hard skills or the technical skills are gauged by the line, etc., what we at HR mainly do is try to gauge an understanding or seek information on the softer aspects of the individuals, either by using the psychometric testing at various levels. For some of the levels, we don't see it useful to use the psychometric testing. So depending on the function, depending on the levels, we engage into, seeking information on the softer aspects through the testing assessments, etc. What I jump to seek is, more of information, or rather real-time experiences or evidences from the candidates, mainly on what is their need to achieve, what is their desire, what do they seek through their aspirations, how do they connect the dots with, how do they build rapport in the course of these few hours of interaction that we have with them. And we seek to hear such real-time experience and evidences, and these evidences we try to put together and create a story, and try to even get feedback through referrals, through milestones of their previous organizations, to see whether those evidences were actually real, through our ref checks, etc. So that is where we invest in as HR, because today, while our candidates, etc., are very good at storytelling, they are good at actually the social media has made everyone very good at weaving stories, I should say. However, how true and how valid are those? The validity of those stories, the reliability of what they tell us during the interviews, is something that we aim to test, and we aim to decipher, decode, or rather verify, you may say, at that level. So among the softer aspects, I feel these are the two or three main things that I personally advise my team members and recruiters to connect on and gauge during the interactions.
Thank you for sharing that, Pratima. Those are very important insights. So, Sujata, I'd like to come to you, and I want to understand, like how can we measure, these competencies that the BFSI sector looks for, at the recruitment level? Like, what is the role technology will play?
Yeah. So, few thoughts around it, right? I think first off, we see, we've seen a very clear ask to have a combination of areas in an assessment. So that and what that means is, of course, the domain and the functional sort of assessment to some extent depends on the level. At an entry level, one will not expect a candidate to have deep understanding of banking or something like that, but some level of domain. And but typically it's a combination, right? It's testing, a cognitive, behavioral, some level of I mean, if it's a sales profile, then aptitude around sales. uh, Typically, if it's it may not, I mean, BFSI jobs, a large part of it may not need coding, sort of ability as such, but aptitude for digital usage, understanding, and so on. And very importantly, I think across the space, this need for assessing, focus on customer. I think because a lot of hiring, in this space, a large part of it happens at the frontline level, or there's always some level of interaction. So focus on customer experience, understanding, empathy, stuff like that. So it's typically a combination of all of this that we have seen being assessed. That's one sort of input. The other is, I think, it's very hard to do, but we try our best to help assess cultural fit. Yeah. And some of it may come through a psychometric assessment, but there are ways and means of assessing if an individual will fit into the culture of an organization, and it's typically a customized work, right? But that's another area that people want to see, at least to get an idea of the level of fitment. um, I'll throw the last one in, and maybe if we have time, it'll be interesting to hear the panelists' views. We have not seen it as much yet, I guess, in the BFSI space, but this need for um, predicting attrition, or the other way around, right? I mean, how long is that that candidate going to stay, right? Or can you predict attrition sort of risks? So that seems to be another sort of high demand area. It's been so in the ITEA space, but based on what I heard Ruhi, Pratima, and Venkatesh speaking about, that now that challenge is in BFSI as well. That's another area of assessment. It's not a competency thing, but it's more about personality and need and other factors. But so typically the design of an assessment is in all of these areas, and that's how we design something for for different roles and so on. Coding and technical ability, of course, if the role demands it, then definitely that's a large part of a typical assessment that goes in. So that's how we've seen the design at a hiring level.
Thank you for telling us about the areas that we can focus on when designing recruitment assessment strategies. So Ruhi, I'd like to come to you now. So we've spoken about the competencies that is in demand at the BFSI sector, and what I wish to understand is to understand from you is how do we bridge this, this skill demand, this competency demand. And I would also like to, plug in an audience question, which is, along with bridging the skill demand is also the challenge of, increased competition in the recruitment space and also attrition, which Sujata talked about. So how do we, address these challenges and bridge the skill demand?
Right. I think I'll take the first one at a slightly broader level. If you really look at it, all has to, kind of start with a very clear. Someone talked about a sourcing strategy. I think Sujata mentioned it, or I'm not sure if Pratima mentioned it. Similarly, you need to have a very clearly defined talent strategy. If you don't have that definition right up front, then you will be reacting. So in that talent strategy, it's very important for the HR as well as the business, because in the BFSI sector, talent is your business. There is really no product. All we are dealing with are financial products, maybe a little bit of infrastructure where banks come in. But that is your key. In many ways, it is your key product or your raw material. So if you can define what percentage of this talent will be built, what is it that you are seeking to aspire, or what are the kind of capabilities you require in the next 3 years, where are you today, and then try and have a very clearly articulated plan of saying, in my entire talent pool, and there also a lot of assessment tools are used by organizations, we certainly use it, using these assessment tools to identify on one side your critical roles and capabilities, and on the other side your high potential talent. And if there is a way in which you can bridge that gap by development, that's primarily very required. In many ways, it answers your second question also of attrition. I've seen that when you are able to showcase a career to people, that's one of the short ways of trying to retain talent. Otherwise, this in this war for talent, with people jumping the gun for like a few percentage points here, and then you try to throw retention offers, it doesn't work. If you are able to show them that if you were to stay with me over the next 3 years, I'm going to take you from point X to point Y. How? Some of that through development programs, some of that through job rotation, new assignments, etc. So that's one part. Second is bridging that gap. A lot of that will have to come from campus. What are going to be your campus strategies? Are you going to go to B schools? Will you go to IITs? Will you go to what kind of campuses and which roles? So that's a very big cohort for us, because both for technology and analytics, the buy market is getting, it's really getting saturated. So beyond the point, you're all chasing the same person. We genuinely believe and we like to bring in the entire concept of diversity, whether it's occupational diversity, age diversity, gender diversity, sexual orientation. What kind of cohorts of diversity are you going to go after? So we are this year focusing a lot on getting talent who's from the people with disabilities area. On a gender diversity front, we're already doing quite well. Where are these diversity cohorts going to be? And last but not the least, buy, which is to say that in the next 3 years, where having done all this, what capabilities I still don't have, and thereby how do I go, getting it. Beyond the point, Asmani, the war of attrition cannot be bridged only by taking compensation high, because there's someone else with deeper pockets who's going to take that. I believe very strongly career, a very inclusive workplace, and these are basis some very strong research papers which have come out in the past. And for us, taking a punt on talent and empowerment, if we are able to have a very clearly articulated value proposition, stickiness of employees should go up.
Uh, Thank you for sharing that, Ruchi. Like that entire emphasis on employee value proposition is, I think that is like a game changer, especially in the recruitment space today. So, Venkatesh, now I would like to understand, your take on how organizations can bridge the bridge the skill gap. And also we have some, audience questions where they're asking about how a lot of, potential candidates, they drop out at the last minute, or they're looking mostly at the financial gain. So how do we address these challenges?
Very, very critical. I think all of us face this. And in terms of the skill gaps that exist today, and typically what I'm seeing personally from my experience, I can tell you that there is a lot more focus today on the what versus how. So there is increased amount of pressure on achievement of targets and numbers, then how to get that done. And the deficit over there is largely in terms of the communication between the supervisor and the employee who's actually going to achieve certain objectives, etc. And the trouble is also on account of the top down versus bottom up approach. And there are advantages and disadvantages of both. When you do a bottom up approach, when you actually ask the employee what do you want to be skilled at, you could actually start boiling the ocean. When you do top down, the organization wants somebody to be filling at certain critical gaps, but the employee doesn't think that that is going to help. I think that's one area need to be bridged as far as the skill gap that exists. And typically, where the challenge is actually occurring is I think because of the great resignations that you are seeing, that the need to constantly train the workforce again and again, and running your factory, it has become a much bigger aspect of challenge for the people. Regulator is also looking at it that you need to build a lot of skill around the risk compliance and governance framework. And today's youngster is focusing in terms of how do I achieve my target and get on with it. Supervisor is also focusing on that number, pressure, etc. This, according to me, is a big gap between what is required and what we are actually able to build in the workplace. And which is why there's need to have constant reinforcement from everyone, right through the training intervention or supervisory intervention. I think it's going to be there for some time till we really understand that the areas such as risk compliance will continue to play a vital and a critical role, and we need to build skill around that. Second is how to do that. If the managers today who are in transient managers, who have actually got the position of a manager, but they really don't know from a supervisory capability perspective, they are not able to manage the workforce and get the work out. So improving communication, improving the supervisory capability, building on risk compliance and governance part of it is going to play a very, very vital role. And I think that's where the gap is. And even in the market, if you see that the shortage of skill set are also in this area, you will get plenty of people on the sales side who constantly churn, but getting these skill set is a trouble area. Your second part of the question is related to how do you ensure that there are dropouts, etc., and you mitigate that. I think where companies face this challenge is where there is a longer, notice period is one part, and then people have found nowadays a much better way of, getting more offers is that you resign without actually having any jobs, or you resign and then you start looking for more opportunities. All of this are happening because there is a shortage of talent in the market. And as I said before, that everyone is looking for the same talent which is available. And obviously if we know the demand and supply theory, the candidate is going to do that, because again it's a seller's market in that front. I think the need for us to do, or rather as a strategy, we need to expand the pool. There is no shortcut. Institution building process would have to factor the longer term, which has to be a 2 to 3 year kind of a time frame. And if you are able to build a longer term talent base, you will be able to actually sustain that. I'll give you one example, and this is a real life example which I would like to share. In our big data team, probably we lost 90% of the people in the last 6 months, 6 to 8 months. And every candidate whom you make an offer would actually on the 89th day would say, look, I'm ready to join you. My salary today, you're offering me 9 lakh rupees, but if you give me 18 lakh rupees, I'm going to join you. And there are people who would actually tell, look, I have another offer and I will go there. And that's where we said, look, we will build this whole unit from scratch. The person who was going to head that unit was very nervous, because said that we are going to build it absolutely from scratch with the management trainee or engineers whom we will hire from across. And we put together a 6 weeks or an 8 week program for the youngsters who joined. And I can tell you that after 6 to 8 months time frame, the person who's heading the unit is so happy because the quality of talent that we have been able to get, it was not possible if we had a lateral hire and who would have actually who would have dropped out at 89th or 90th day. I think the nature of the game is patience. Okay, of course business suffers during this period. I mean, you will not be able to do certain things, but it is better to take that short term pain versus building a long term capability for the institution. And I've also told that person that, look, what you did now 6 to 8 months back, you please keep doing that every year, because if you think that this is what you are going to continue for rest of your life, it's not going to happen. You need to continuously invest in hiring freshers and making sure you build that. On the aggregate, you ask me, with what would eventually happen in or how do you contain that. I think some corrections will happen in some time to come. Either there will be a price correction in terms of there are inequities of salary. That's why people actually move jobs across, and some organizations pay less, some are paying more, and there are these inequities are existing. And the person always, if you see, doesn't move at a lateral level. They always move one grade higher at a higher salary. So it also means that the organizations are not able to take care of their growth and career aspirations apart from the monetary needs, etc. They have to also look at inward. So one way they would be either a price correction, because if you don't have productivity increase, it is not going to be sustainable, because your wage cost in across as an economy is going to increase, and if it is not backed by let's say productivity level increases, how do you justify that? So one is there could be price correction over there, market itself will correct, or companies, if their performance is better, they would actually be able to correct the price for their segments of people and also address the career needs. I think the name of the game with the youngster is more about managing their career. They're very focused on career. They're very focused on engagement. They're very focused on being told, being asked what they want to do, and involving them in every decision. People have to change their mindset. If we continue to keep the mindset of 90s and think that they are employees for life, I think we have lost the battle already.
Uh, those were fantastic insights, Venkatesh. I think you zeroed in on a lot of critical aspects that will really, help our audience, approach the recruitment strategies differently. So I think in the interest of time, we will have to wrap up. We have a lot of audience questions coming, but thank you so much for joining us today. And all of you shared some fantastic insights, fantastic examples happening at your organization and practical learning. So I'm very grateful to you for joining us today. Thank you, Pratima, Rohi, Venkatesh, and Sujata for sharing your expertise with our audience today. And I would also like to thank MeritTrac for their entire support in curating the session for our audience. So thank you
Thank
once
you.
again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And
Thank
to our
Asmani,
you.
audience,
just
yes.
before we close, it'll be great if you can share the the audience questions. I mean, if there's a way a response at least can go out to
Yes.
them, it would be good to do that. Because we sort of extended a little bit. So let's at least close loop, right?
Yes. Okay. So the last two questions that we had from our employees was mostly on evaluating interviews technically and auto-evaluated virtual interviews. So how organizations can approach that. So what we can do is, for once this session is ended, we can find a way to in our closing email to our attendees, we can insert this
Yeah.
inputs. If
Yeah,
that's okay.
that will be good.
That's a
All
great
right.
idea.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Sujata. Thank you all. Thanks, Asmani. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you so
Thank you,
you.
much.
Thanks,
Swami. Wonderful.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. Lovely listening.